of Pistorius after he was spotted reporting for community service. The state is tight-lipped on whether it will oppose bail.
He complied with all the bail conditions. He attended his court proceedings up until the trial was finalized. Unless there are new circumstances that have come to the fore that warrant the state to deviate from that position.
Pistorius faces the prospect of up to 15 years behind bars. Deputy Judge President Aubrey Ledwaba will preside over the matter, which is expected to be brief, while whether Oscar Pistorius will spend Christmas at home or not will also be made known. But the actual date for the sentencing is unlikely this year. Criselda Lewis, SABC News, in Johannesburg.
Now, for more on the Oscar Pistorius bail hearing, let's now cross live to our reporter Ngoba Ntunu, who's outside the High Court in Pretoria. Ngoba, very good morning to you and welcome. Can you paint us a picture of what is currently happening at the High Court in Pretoria?
Well, certainly, Elvis, a very good morning to you. We are expecting proceedings to begin shortly here at the North Gauteng High Court. Now, this is the first leg of the sentencing procedures against Oscar Pistorius after he was found guilty of murder by the Supreme Court of Appeal last week. And we certainly do expect that the athlete will make his formal bail application after he was convicted of murder. And we do understand that in South African law, a murder conviction is punishable by incarceration. And therefore, Oscar Pistorius will have to present arguments as to why he should not be sent to jail immediately and why he should continue to serve his sentence under house arrest. And certainly we are expecting both parties to discuss this matter, and proceedings are expected to be very brief this morning. We do know that Deputy Judge President Aubrey Ledwaba is going to oversee the matter. We do have some sort of an understanding that the defense and the state might have already met to discuss the issue, and it's highly likely that they have come to some sort of common ground relating to the way forward in this matter. We certainly are going to expect Oscar Pistorius to be here in court today. We do know that the general public, for the general public, this will be the first time that they get to see the athlete after he was incarcerated in October last year. And certainly the world's eyes are again focused here at the North Gauteng High Court as Oscar Pistorius is expected to be in court. The state at this point has not issued a warrant of arrest for Oscar Pistorius, but we do understand that when he appears in court, he'll voluntarily hand himself over to the state. And therefore, we're expecting that these proceedings will therefore continue under those particular conditions. At this stage, therefore, Elvis, so as I've said before, we're expecting proceedings to be very brief, but we do also expect to find out by the end of today whether or not Oscar Pistorius will spend Christmas at home, and indeed also to find a date in which his sentencing arguments will also be held.
Now, we do know that there was huge media interest from the beginning of this particular trial of Oscar Pistorius. Or is there still media interest in the bail application this morning?
Well, Elvis, didn't hear that question properly. It's very hard to hear, as you can imagine, with the media that's here behind me. But what I can indicate is that another thing that we're about to find out today in court is whether or not the defense intends to take this matter on appeal at the Constitutional Court. We do know that they'll have to raise certain constitutional grounds to take this matter forward. And at this stage, what we do know that one of the factors that they could rely on is the fact that Oscar Pistorius did not receive a fair trial. We know that this trial was being across the country, and therefore it's been said, certainly by the defense, that his rights to a free trial or a fair trial could have been infringed by this, and therefore this will certainly be one of the grounds that they could raise when they take this matter to the Constitutional Court. But then again, we do expect that the state will oppose this application, basically on the grounds that the defense had ample time to raise this during the trial itself and also at the Supreme Court of Appeal, but did not choose to do so. But certainly we are going to get some sort of clarity as to whether the defense does intend to take this matter forward. The state at this point has not indicated if they will oppose bail for Oscar Pistorius, but we do know that a murder conviction is a serious charge, and therefore this will be one of the grounds that the state could rely on to deny Oscar Pistorius bail. But then again, the defense could argue that Oscar Pistorius has abided by the law since he applied for bail during his first appearance in 2013, and that he's also abided by the strict conditions of house arrest that were set by the court. So certainly we are yet to find out whether Oscar Pistorius indeed will be spending Christmas at home, or whether he will go back to jail.
Ngoba, thank you so much for that update. As you know, you can't really hear me. There's a lot of noise in the background there with the media contingent, as indicated. Quite a lot of media interest still in the trial, and we'll be going there live in a very, very short while, so you have to stay tuned. Don't go away. There's also a question that we posed to you this morning. The question is, jail or bail for Oscar Pistorius? What is your view? Let us know what's on your mind. Should Oscar Pistorius get bail or jail? I would like to get your thoughts on the Twitter page as well as on our Facebook page. Now, earlier, our reporter Griselda Lewis caught up with the legal expert Llewellyn Kerr-Lewis, and this is what he said about today's bail hearing.
First of all, the purpose of today's proceeding is obviously only to get rid of the lacuna that exists, academically speaking, in law, regarding the position and the status of Oscar Pistorius pending the sentencing that must take place somewhere in the new year. So it's a storm in a teacup, so to speak. I cannot see any problem with setting bail. Obviously, stringent bail conditions will be set to secure his attendance at court when the sentencing starts. Any indication of an appeal to the Constitutional Court at this stage of the proceedings might be considered to be premature. I suppose they can raise it and they can mention that consideration, but seriously, consideration can only be done after sentencing has taken place and the matter at hand, in actual fact, finalized. That is the right time to do so. On the assumption that they do consider lodging an appeal, there are only two procedures to follow. They must get leave to appeal to the Constitutional Court first of all, which will not easily be granted since a unanimous verdict was handed down by the Supreme Court of Appeal, first of all. Or alternatively, they must, by means of what we call a petition procedure, approach the Chief Justice directly. Those are the two options available. A constitutional principle must be infringed upon. One might say that the mere fact that the media was allowed access to the courts and that witnesses was influenced indirectly or unduly, that might be considered the constitutional issue at stake, which they might take as the point of departure.
Remember that we will be crossing to the bail application live in a short while, so you have to stay tuned. We believe that Oscar Pistorius has already arrived, and we'll take some of those pictures in a short while too. But meanwhile, the commission appointed to investigate the collapse of a bridge in Sandton, north of Johannesburg, will spell out its terms of reference in Pretoria today. That inquiry is expected to take at least 6 months to complete. 2 people were killed and 19 others injured when the Grayston Drive pedestrian and cyclist bridge collapsed on October the 14th this year. The Department of Labour says it established a Section 32 inquiry in terms of the Occupational Health and Safety Act into the collapse of the bridge to find out exactly what caused the accident. We'll be also crossing to that particular hearing live a little bit later. So also stay tuned right here on your favorite channel, Channel 404. This is Newsroom. The Secretary-General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, has made an impassioned plea to countries negotiating a new climate deal at the COP21 conference in Paris. He's asked them to put their differences aside and conclude a legally binding agreement by Friday, or risk plunging billions of poor people into environmental calamities due to rising global temperatures. But the funding dispute remains a major threat to a climate deal.
From consultation rooms to focus groups, negotiators worked the floor of the conference the whole day yesterday, intensely lobbying each other's support on key aspects of the proposed climate deal. There is some hope, others believe.
And it does really look promising at this point in time. We have asked the COP president now to consider several proposals, amongst which is really to now ensure that we have a text that's now a full agreement, proposed agreement, by Wednesday. And we think that that is doable, that is possible.
The most lobbied bloc here is the Group of 77 in China, currently chaired by South Africa. With over 100 developing countries as members, it's a solid and highly influential group. Some say there can be no deal if the conference does not concede to its key demands, which include billions of dollars for mitigation.
We would like to see the agreement coming out of Paris and being an ambitious agreement which will be applicable to all, which will be fair, and that all of us as parties, when we turn our backs from here, will go and implement and continue to assess as we go on. So it's not that we are, as the G77 plus China, looking for the impossible. It's that which we have agreed upon as a mandate that comes from Durban to be completed here.
Seeking to ensure that the negotiations do not collapse as they did 6 years ago in Copenhagen, the Secretary General of the United Nations held bilateral engagements with key role players yesterday. He urged them to put their differences aside.
I call on all ministers, all negotiators to cooperate, united by common purpose and common sense, to secure our common home and share the future. I count on your leadership, strong commitment, and wise decisions for humanity.
As another day begins, delegates here are aware that they are running against time. The good thing is that all of them agree that Paris 2015 cannot fail, because the consequences of not having a deal by the end of this week will be too ghastly to contemplate. Tammy Dixon, SABC News in Paris.
Well, let's hand you now over to Eben Janssen for in-depth interviews and analysis. Over to you, Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Travis. Now, we just saw Oscar Pistorius arrived in court. I can't tell you that for that bail hearing this morning. It looks like it's going to be a very, very brief procedure. We will interrupt our regular broadcasting to go there for that procedure, but in the meantime, we'll carry on. Now, it's estimated that at least 3.5 million South Africans were forcibly removed from their land as a result of the Native Land Act of 1913, which effectively reserved 87% of land in the country for the white minority. As a result, the government launched a land restitution program that was opened between 1994 and 1998. Although land claims were made and settled, a great number of people complained that they had not been aware of the process at the time, and as such, they had missed the initial lodgement window. The government has since relaunched another open window period for the land claims until June 2019. Now, to unpack land claim issues a little bit further in our studios this morning, we are joined by the Chief Land Claims Commissioner here in South Africa, Nomfundo Nhloko Gobodo. Very good morning to you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Now, the green paper and all the paperwork has been filed over time, the last 20 years almost. Since the reopening, I want to go to the reopening where we are now. Since the reopening of land claims, how many people have benefited, and how has the process proceeded in your view?
Thank you very much for the question. Remember, you've already said that there was a first lodgement opportunity. And now we've got a second window, which the President assigned the Restitution Amendment Act in 2014, June 2014, and opened the window for a period of 5 years. We have to date received 119,000 claims that have been lodged. And remember, in order for us to be able to get to a point where we actually give restoration or alternative redress or financial compensation, we still have to do the research. So at this point in time, we're just receiving the claims. So to date, we've received 119 new claims. Also remember that while we're receiving the new claims, we're still processing the old claims. Yeah. We had about 7,000 plus outstanding claims that we're still dealing with. And so until we finish those, we will then, as soon as that's done, move into the new claims process. But for now, officially, we're just receiving new claims. We're going around the country. We've got 6 mobile offices that allow us to go into deep rural communities to actually receive the claims, so that the communities don't have to come to us necessarily. We actually go to them, especially because, as you have already mentioned, the problem in the past was that people were not aware, or the old people, especially in the deep rural areas, couldn't get access to our offices. So we go to them now.
You mentioned a vast number, 119,000. Tell us about some of the difficulties that you've encountered in recent times in dealing with the land claims.
I think the restitution process in itself is a complex process because you're talking about dispossession that happened quite a long time ago. And so you have to actually do proper research to verify the veracity of the information that you're given, and also just to make sure that the people that you are ultimately going to restore back to their land are the rightful beneficiaries. Yeah. Sometimes you've got competing rights. The claims on the land is on land that is communal, sometimes unregistered, unsurveyed. So there's a lot of work before you can get to a point where you actually say that the claim has been finalized. Secondly, you've got people that who claimed then, who now we have a difficulty finding. And thirdly, we've got communities that then fight over whether they want restoration, or even when they do get restoration, about what they want to do. And so we've got a various myriad of issues that really become barriers to the work that we do.
I want to take you to some of the high-profile cases now. It's reported that the Zulu monarch is claiming almost the entire KwaZulu-Natal, parts of the Free State, and even parts of Mpumalanga in his submission. How far is this submission, and how do you view this submission?
It's actually quite interesting because we haven't received a claim from the king yet.
Okay.
So we will receive his claim just like any other claim, and it will be researched and determination will be made on the whether the claim is valid or not. And remember, the basis of claiming in the Restitution Act is the 1913 cut-off date. And so you would have to meet those requirements for you to have a valid claim.
The other one that's always in the papers is the Khoi and San communities. They are always said to have suffered long before the passing even of the laws in 1913. How are you catering for them in this new process?
Number one, it's important to note that the Khoi and San have not been excluded from the restitution process. So any member of the community who was dispossessed after 1913 is receiving restitution, anyone who's lodged a claim. So we've got claims from the Khoi and San that are post-1913 that are being processed or have already been processed, for example, the Richtersveld matter. But over and above that, in 2013, the president actually said that we should look at exceptions. And these exceptions talk to the descendants of the Khoi and the San, to heritage sites and historic landmarks. And that is going to be a dispensation that is separate from the restitution process because it's about land redistribution. So we're going to do research specifically to cater for those exceptions for the people who were dispossessed before 1913, specifically the Khoi San, identifying historic landmarks. For example, you'll have sites where kings fell or where there were wars of dispossession and the likes that should be marked as part of us redressing or really acknowledging the heritage of the people of the country.
It's going to be a very interesting process. In conclusion, I want to ask you that the date is set the 30th of June 2019. You'll be done with all land claims and everyone will be happy after that day. Is that what you're thinking?
No. 2019 is the last day. June 2019 is the last day you can actually lodge your claim. So it's important for people to actually go onto our website, go visit the buses that go around the communities and understand that it's a process of actually coming to say, I have a claim. Beyond 2019, we'll still be processing claims. We'll still be verifying the information that has been received, and we'll still be giving land back to beneficiaries, alternative redress, or alternative land.
It's going to be a very long process, I'm sure of that.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining us today. The Chief Land Claims Commissioner, Nomfundo Nhloko Gobodo, joined us this morning to talk about where the process is, what are some of the sensitivities of some of the interesting cases. And I can tell you next week we'll bring in other stakeholders and we'll continue the conversation around land claims in South Africa, since it's such an emotional and emotive issue for many, many South Africans. Now, an emotional man this morning will be Paralympian superstar Oscar Pistorius. Of course, he'll apply for bail shortly at the High Court. This after judges change his culpable homicide conviction to murder last week. Those pictures you see there was him being rushed into the court a short while ago, about 10 minutes ago. He's taken into court. Of course, he's currently under house arrest after spending a year of his original 5-year sentence at the Kgosi Correctional Facility. Lots of tweets and lots of views, as you can imagine, on social media. Sure Kamhanga says, reading that Oscar Pistorius' legal team want to take the matter to the Constitutional Court. Yes, that's what's on the table. And Teo says, heartless. For God's sake, December, can these people let Oscar Pistorius enjoy it for now? The dude has been through a lot. Yes, he's been through a lot, but what about the Steenkamp family that have been through even more? Lebo talks about, will Oscar Pistorius get rest now? Oh, this is too much for him and the family. He'll get bail today, they say. Molemo talks about Oscar Pistorius' legal team. He said to appeal at the Constitutional Court, he should start trying to exonerate himself and do his time. On a sobering note there from Molemo this morning, do your time, he says. Of course, let's take a look at our picture of the day. Now, this one comes from the Ice Age, and it's captioned, the aftermath of the floods at the Cumbrian landscape. Now, I can tell you that picture is from the northwestern parts of England, where flooding continues to wreak havoc in that part of the world. Now, let's take a look at the front pages from around the globe. We start with the International New York Times. It reports that the Islamic State is focused on prophetic text stating that Islam will be victorious after an apocalyptic battle to be set off once Western armies come to the region. Then in Europe, the Times reports that ministers announced a full review of Britain's storm defences yesterday as they blame global warming for the floods that have devastated the Cumbria. Finally, in China, the South China Morning Post reports that much of northern China remains covered by thick, hazardous smog as Beijing restricted the use of cars, shut schools and halted outdoor construction after issuing its highest ever red pollution alert, which came into effect this morning. Now, if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see some of the pictures of the smog there. It's absolutely shocking. You can hardly see your hand in front of your face. Yes, global warming is with us, and let's hope a climate deal is struck. But our question of the day, should Oscar get bail or jail? We'll be live inside of the High Court in a couple of minutes. Don't go away. We'll take a break.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
We live in a digital era, and the number of Africans with mobile phones is rapidly increasing.
Twitter use is predominantly being done on smartphones. This is a very African phenomenon.
Here, there are constantly new innovative ways to make the internet more affordable. With that, we're seeing protests against governments proposing methods to limit access. On Network, we give you information about all of this. We also have new computers, games and robots.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. Now, waste management company Pick It Up is optimistic that they'll be able to deal with the refuse backlog here in the city of Johannesburg and surrounding areas. Pick It Up employees embarked on a strike 2 weeks ago, leaving the streets of Johannesburg with piles of uncollected garbage. Residents had to endure rubbish bin pile-ups outside their homes. The strike ended last week with an intervention by the Gauteng government. Now, Pick It Up striking workers under the South African Municipal Workers Union had been hard at work from last Friday to give people here in Gauteng a clean and healthy environment so that we can all enjoy the festive season. Now, Pick It Up Managing Director Amanda now joins us in studio this morning to give us an update. Good morning.
Good morning, Evan.
An interesting week, a couple of real messy 2 weeks for all the citizens of Johannesburg. But just give us an update how you guys are dealing with the backlog that we've seen. There's lots of rubbish all over the city.
Even as at the signing of the agreement last week, Thursday, the SAMU leadership were very quick to mobilize staff to come back. And we had a fairly good turnout even on that night shift on Thursday night. Friday, again, a very good turnout. The staff then committed to working the weekend. I think we've cleared, I would say, between 70 to 80% of the backlog as I speak to you. There's been a huge effort, and I think one that Pick It Up, the city of Joburg, and the residents of Joburg appreciate.
Yeah.
We're constantly monitoring the situation. What we've done as well is we're doubling up with plant and equipment so we can work through the day as well as some night shift in order to clear the garden refuse sites.
What are the lessons you would say that Pick It Up and Johannesburg has learned from this experience?
You know, I think that, look, there are a lot of operational lessons that we've learned. We certainly need to review our strike contingency plan. But I think the most critical thing, and it's about the nature of the conversation we're having around waste management. You know, our typical behavior is to take whatever we dispose of and generate in our homes and throw it into the bin.
Yeah.
But if you reflect on the fact that waste is a resource, that we ought to be recycling, we ought to be reducing the waste that we're generating. So the nature of where we find ourselves as a society needs to start changing. Individuals need to start changing their behavior with respect to waste. And I think that's the most important thing for citizens. Also for citizens, I think it's about people taking responsibility for their own environments. You know, we've got a lot of criticism where people say, oh, my waste is piling up. When is Pick It Up going to come and fetch it? But my question back to residents in Joburg is, what did you do?
Yeah. That's a fair question. And it almost leads into the next question. Do you think it's time for waste management to become an essential service or sort of ring-fenced as an essential service so that we don't go down this kind of route again?
Absolutely, and it's a matter that we are giving serious consideration to. Together with our shareholder, the City of Johannesburg, we'll be doing the preparatory work for the application early in January, because I think the issues around waste are also related to the fact that waste piling up starts to become a hazard, a health hazard for communities. But even I go back to what I said, which is if we're dealing with waste differently, we're unlikely to ever have the kind of crisis we saw in the last 2 weeks.
Amanda, thank you very much for that. Unfortunately, I would have liked to carry on with the interview, but there you see Gerinal, he's already in his full battle regalia this morning. The court is in session for Oscar Pistorius' bail hearing. Let's go to the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria.
In terms of the provisions of Section 6011B of the Criminal Procedure Act, that is what we refer to as the so-called Schedule 5 offence, which this conviction falls into. We have prepared an affidavit. May I ask leave, and I will then deal with this affidavit, to make available to you the signed affidavit. It's signed by the accused, and I would ask the court to accept it as A in these proceedings.
So are you going to call any witnesses, or the application is just based on the affidavit?
It's going to be based on the affidavit, and if I may say, we made the affidavit also available to the state yesterday.
And the state? Are you going to call any witnesses? Are you opposing the application for bail?
No, it would be unopposed. We'll make submissions from here.
as far as the application is concerned.
Thank you.
Subject to your direction, I will only refer to the main parts to explain the bail affidavit without having to read it into the record.
Yes.
Because it is, the state has seen it and it is before the court then. The structure is to deal with the personal circumstances and to accept that this is a Schedule 5 offence for bail purposes, and that there is then an onus on the accused to satisfy the court that the interest of justice permit his release. The history of the bail matter, my Lord, is dealt with at page 3, and you would see from that that right from the inception of this case, the accused was released on bail. He was first released on the basis of premeditated murder. Bail was granted in the Magistrates Court, Pretoria. The an appeal, but to the High Court, this High Court, but only in relation to certain conditions. The appeal was heard by His Lordship, Mr. Justice Bum, that was successful in respect of some of the conditions, and the conditions were amended, which are not really relevant for present purposes. Thereafter, the accused stood trial. He abided by all the conditions all the time. And, of course, when he was convicted of culpable homicide, the bail lapsed. There was a formal application for the extension of his bail, which was granted. And when he was sentenced, the bail lapsed. And at that point in time, the accused chose to commence with the serving of his sentence without, again, asking for bail pending any further proceedings. The next step, my Lord, was then an appeal in terms of the provisions of Section 319 of the Criminal Procedure Act to the Supreme Court of Appeal on 3 questions of law. The first 2 questions of law were found to be successful, and as a consequence of that, the Supreme Court of Appeal set aside the conviction on culpable homicide, and accordingly also set aside the present sentence, to which I will revert now, and convicted the accused of murder in the sense that he acted with the criminal intention of relevant to dolus eventualis. Before and up to that time, the accused served a sentence that was imposed by the trial court. That was a sentence of 5-year imprisonment with due regard to the provisions of Section 2761I of the Criminal Procedure Act. That sentence provides that an accused would generally serve 1/6 of his sentence, and then the remaining part of his sentence in terms of conditions under correctional supervision. The accused was released after 12 months, and he commenced his sentence in terms of the conditions of correctional supervision at the end of October 2015. For the purposes of the present bail application, and you will see this from the affidavit, the accused has offered to proceed with the house arrest, but on stricter conditions. Previously, in terms of the correctional supervision conditions, he was allowed to leave the house at 230 Lawley Street, Waterkloof, Pretoria, between the hours 7 o'clock and 12 o'clock. He has agreed, and agreed so with the state as well, that he would abandon that right that he had in terms of the previous sentence and the previous conditions, and that he would accept that he should remain in house arrest at 230 Lawley Street, Waterkloof. Should he, for whatever reason, need to leave the premises, he would do so with the permission of either the investigating officer, Major Mike van Aert, or Advocate Johnson here. That's also agreed, subject, of course, to your sanctioning, my Lord. He also agreed, subject to your sanctioning, that he would submit himself to electronic monitoring to be monitored in terms of Section 62F of the Criminal Procedure Act by Mr. Stalls, a probation officer in the Department of Correctional Services.
Mr. Roux, this condition in respect of the house arrest, that he could leave between 7 o'clock in the morning and 12 midday. Why is it necessary to change it? What prompted
the state insisted on that. We weren't too keen, but in order to get to an unopposed bail, that's for that reason.
Okay, yes, may I proceed?
It was solely for that reason. There was no other reason, just to get some agreement. It is also that the accused would subject, of course, to your direction, my lord, that bail amounts fixed in the amount of 10,000 to be paid on Friday, and the reason was that it was not part of what the informal agreement was. It came up this morning, and therefore we would request.
Previously, how much did he pay?
It was 1 million rand, but it was a guarantee. He hasn't got that money. He simply, and the guarantee was then cancelled. It was not by way of a cash amount. And we would also ask the court to consider that amount be paid on the 11th of December. That's Friday before 1600, but that the court would order that he be released today notwithstanding the fact that the amount has not been paid today. May I hand to you a document that's proposed conditions, nothing more.
Yes.
Look, if I then may again summarize the format of the affidavit, it deals then with the basis for the application for leave to appeal to the Constitutional Court, and it makes then provision that bail be granted. It's subject to three things. The one is the application for leave to appeal to the Constitutional Court. The second event is that if that application is successful, the appeal to the Constitutional Court, and if unsuccessful, then the matter must come back to the trial court for a consideration of the imposition of sentence on the present conviction. Look, I may say, and when we drafted a new document, if I may just hand to you it's not a document with correct bail conditions, but what is important is the first part of it, just to say the three steps concerning the Constitution, the application for leave to appeal, that it's pending the leave to appeal, pending the appeal, and pending the imposition. Sensibly, it should have been the first part of incorporated in the present bail conditions, just the first part thereof. I submit that, say for what I've put to you, that this is really the format of the application. It deals with every section in section 64B, which is the empowering section for the court to consider bail, and it addresses every issue. We've placed that before the court. I don't think in respect of the subsections that there should be any dispute. It is dealt with, and those sections more sensibly deal with the safeguarding of exhibits and no interference with witnesses. Of course, we have passed that stage. There is no trial that must still take place. And it deals with the fact whether or not the accused is a flight risk. I can make one simple submission. This has been tested in all the other bail applications and found that he is not a flight risk. He's a well-known person. He's got a disability. He has abided by all the bail conditions all the time. And he has shown then a history that he commits himself to the structures of the criminal justice system, and we submit that he will proceed to do so, and that there is no danger or no risk for the criminal justice system, and that's dealt with. I don't know if you need any further elaboration on the affidavit, but that's a summary of that.
Regarding the house arrest, has the necessary arrangements been made with the Department of Correctional Services?
It has. In fact, Mr. Stolz is also in court, and we have arranged with him that at 2 o'clock this afternoon, permission was granted, that we would go to the offices of the department for purposes of finalising and completing all the arrangements relevant to the monitoring.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Roux.
Thank you.
Mr. Nell.
We just have one or two submissions to make in terms of the process. Unlike application for bail, where accused is awaiting trial, we have a convicted murderer applying for bail. So the conditions should be stricter, and that's why we've only been swayed, my Lord, not to oppose and to make other submissions by the two issues, and that is the house arrest and the electronic monitoring. And we also agreed to an amount of bail of 10,000 rand, because in the affidavit you see it's discussed it's discussed that the accused does not have the means to pay a higher amount of bail. But we're comfortable that the mere fact that the accused will be under house arrest and that there will be electronic monitoring, we will ensure that the accused remain and stand his trial. As a general submission, we're not convinced that the accused has made out a good case and that his application to the Constitutional Court will be successful, but we acknowledge that he has a right to bring such an application. And
let's go back to the issue of the house arrest.
Yes, my lord.
It was submitted earlier that I think he could leave the house between 7 and midday. Why is it necessary to change that condition?
That was a condition of his community service and by correctional services on a charge of culpable homicide and having done a part of his sentence. This is now completely different. The accused is looking at a minimum sentence of 15 years, and this is as if he's not been sentenced. So
that for him now to be in the house for the whole day, that amounts to a punishment on its own?
Not necessarily, my lord, with the utmost respect. It is agreement between the state and the accused for not opposing. We still believe that we'll have a good case to oppose, but knowing where the accused will be for the remainder of the day, knowing that we could monitor the accused, swayed us not to oppose. And, my lord, we still believe that this accused, being convicted of murder, looking at a sentence of 15 years, may be a flight risk.
I understand that point, but have you also considered the fact that now if he won't be allowed to leave the house within a certain period of time, don't you think that practically it may cause a problem that always he would need to phone the investigating officer to make arrangements, and that would mean that that would create more work for the investigating officer, especially having regard to how he behaved after this condition was put on him?
But we feel strongly about the fact that we need to monitor this accused 24 hours.
There'll be electronic monitoring should he move out of the house that can assist.
But we feel strongly that he should not leave the house at any time. And as far as being a burden on the investigating officer and Advocate Johnson, it was discussed with them. We're willing to do that. We were just swayed, and I say that with the utmost respect, not to oppose bail. Having taken into account how the accused conducted himself when he was on bail previously, how he conducted himself after he was convicted of culpable homicide. But this is different. He is now convicted of murder. There's a minimum sentence of 15 years. We will have an argument that if the Court of Appeal was correct, and if the evidence that was not taken into account will be taken into account, and that's Mr. Mangena's evidence, this borders on dolus directus, and not so much
I don't think there's a relevant argument to make at this stage.
The seriousness of the conviction, I think, is relevant.
We must consider the facts that are before us. Yeah. The Supreme Court clearly stated that the murder charge is based on dolus eventualis.
Indeed. But in terms of sentence, and I say it with the utmost respect, in terms of sentence, the case law is clear. One will also allow degrees. On the one degree, it will be closer to negligence. Another degree of dolus eventualis will be closer to dolus directus. We say that this is serious. This is a serious offence, and that this accused is looking at 15 years. And that's why we think, and we argue, that there should be serious bail conditions. Also taken into account, my lord, that if the accused would abscond, not having any assets or money or anything, that the only thing that he can lose for now is 10,000 rand in absconding. We have in the previous bail application, and could have done it again, also argued on his links with countries like Italy and so forth, and we would have done that again, my lord, if we did not reach an agreement. But we have reached an agreement, and we kindly... And
well, I'm not bound by that agreement.
No, you're not.
Yes.
But we submit that we feel strongly about that, and would ask the court to agree.
Yes.
As a court, please. Anything that you would still want me to address you on. As far as the electronic monitoring is concerned, there's a protocol in place that we will follow. Even with electronic monitoring, it would be easier to monitor somebody that you know will be at a specific place at a specific time. So, because now, if he's allowed to travel, to leave the house between 7 and 12 every day, we will have to monitor between 7 and 12 his movements every day. Whereas, if we know that he's leaving, and if he's leaving with permission, and we inform all people that will be doing the monitoring, that would be just so much easier. Otherwise, we'll have to focus on this particular accused every day, at least from 7 to 12, to monitor every movement.
Mr. Nel, I'm strongly considering making an order that he could leave the house, but to travel within a certain radius, a reasonable radius. What do you say to that?
My Lord, well, that would be my alternative argument. It all depends on what the radius would be. Would the court be...
As I've told you, that's what I'm considering. What do you submit would be the reasonable radius from the house?
It's very difficult. Well, at the most, not to leave the jurisdiction of the magistrate area. That is at the furthest. The closest would be, I don't know what his movements would be. I would want a radius of 10 kilometers around his house. I would agree to a radius of 10 kilometers around his house. As a court basis.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Root, do you have further submissions to make?
See there in the proposed conditions, Manut, you would see there is a paragraph C that refers to say the accused will not leave the magisterial district of Pretoria/Tshwane. That was provided for.
In which paragraph?
It's paragraph C of the first document.
Just for the benefit of everybody and myself too, the magisterial district of Tshwane, how big is this area, the area of Tshwane? Hence I mentioned a radius which I think it would make more sense.
I think it would be about 20. I'm guessing it's quite vast. I would say about 30 kilometers at least, yeah. It should be at least about 30 kilometers. I'm guessing, but I think it's quite educated.
Okay, thank you. Yes, yes, you may do so.
If the court considers a radius, what we'll have to keep into account that we have an airport that we would not want the accused to get close to. And so if that would fall outside that radius, that would be so much better. I've just been informed that we would be able to monitor a radius if we have all the GPS coordinates of such a radius. So if the court makes a clear indication that it's a radius of 5 kilometers, of 10 kilometers, in terms of the electronic monitoring, we would be able to monitor that. That if you would leave that particular radius, that there will be alert sounding at the control room.
Okay, can you repeat the last submission that you made?
That if the court clearly indicates that it's a radius of 5 kilometers, we will be able to do that electronically and to monitor that electronically if we have all the GPS coordinates, which we will be able to get. That way, if he would leave that radius and move beyond the radius, there will be an alarm sounded at the control room, and we would know that is a fact.
Okay. So you don't have any further submissions to make in this respect?
No, that's it.
Okay. Mr. Pistorius, can you stand up? Do you confirm that you freely and voluntarily made this affidavit, which has been handed to court? Yeah. You may sit. The affidavit by the accused will be labeled Exhibit A. And the court will adjourn for about 15 minutes to consider the submissions made by both counsel. Court adjourns.
Talk looks into the increase of suicide and symptoms leading to suicide.
The death wish grows when you go into depression after a lot of stress.
And often when we talk about suicide, we don't talk about a person wanting to stop living, but rather wanting to stop living in pain.
After losing everything in life that lead you to no options but suicide.
I had that spirit of fear in me to say, don't even face tomorrow.
After being overwhelmed with stress and trauma, it becomes difficult to have self-control.
People learning tools and skills that will practically enable them to meet these challenges.
In trying times, never be alone. Reach out for help to a better solution.
Support should be done by a counsellor or psychologist where you're able to speak about how you're feeling in a safe, accepting, non-judgmental space.
For all your health tips, join Dr. Silo Mutawuni every Saturday from 9 till 10.
The son of Africa, Trevor Noah, is leaving America in stitches.
I never dreamed that I would one day have, well, two things really. An indoor toilet and a job as host of The Daily Show.
We are the first to bring you the latest films around the globe.
Dear white people, the minimum requirement of black friends needed to not seem racist has just been raised to 2.
Cobbins Asako is a gifted blind musician, a master of soothing notes from the piano.
I love to sit behind the piano. You know, that also helps me find inspiration.
Join Refulo Mulwa every Friday for that 1-hour weekly dose of art and entertainment news at 9 p.m. on Trends.
This is Newsroom. It's 10:00 hours Central African time on this Tuesday, the 8th of December 2015. I hope that you're having a good time thus far. A warm welcome to the second hour. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock today. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. We're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. But first, let's take a look at all your news headlines. Oscar Pistorius' legal representative Barry Rue has told the High Court in Pretoria that his client will approach the Constitutional Court to appeal the murder conviction. The commission appointed to investigate the collapse of a bridge in Sandton north of Johannesburg will outline its terms of reference in Pretoria today. And the African group attending the climate change summit in Paris are demanding a deal that prioritizes the vulnerable and urgent needs of African countries to mitigate the deadly effects of rising temperatures. These are some of the stories coming up in this hour, but first let's find out from Kendall Makamata what he has in store for us on the sports front. A very good morning to you, Kendall.
Good morning, Elvis, and good morning to you at home as well. In the sports today, this is what we've got for you. Kusal Pereira, Sri Lanka's wicketkeeper, has been dropped from the New Zealand tour for testing positive for a banned substance. And in tennis, Serena Williams inspires the Philippine Mavericks to victory over the Japan Warriors in Manila. This as Michel Platini, the embattled head of European football, goes to court to try to get his 90-day FIFA suspension lifted. And Manchester United look to break their goal famine when they play Wolfsburg in their final UEFA Champions League group match tonight. That's what we've got for you in the sport. Back to you, Elvis.
Well, that's all coming up a little later with Oscar Makamate in your sports news, so stay tuned for that. Our top story this hour. Oscar Pistorius' legal representative Barry Rue has told the High Court in Pretoria that his client will approach the Constitutional Court to appeal the murder conviction. This comes after the Supreme Court of Appeal overturned the athlete's culpable homicide conviction to murder last week. Pistorius killed his girlfriend Reva Steenkamp on Valentine's Day in 2013.
Again, summarise the format of the affidavit. It deals then with the basis for the application for leave to appeal to the Constitutional Court, and it makes then provision that bail be granted. It's subject to three things. The one is the application for leave to appeal to the Constitutional Court. The second event is that if that application is successful, the appeal to the Constitutional Court, and if unsuccessful, then the matter must come back to the trial court for a consideration of the imposition of sentence on the present conviction. I may say, and when we drafted a new document, if I may just say to you, it's not a document with correct bail conditions, but what is important is the first part of it, just to say the three steps concerning the application for leave to appeal, that it's pending the leave to appeal, pending the appeal, and pending the imposition. Sensibly, it should have been the first part of incorporated in the present bail conditions. Yes. Just the first part thereof. I submit that, say for what I've put to you, that this is really the format of the application. It deals with every section in section 64B, which is the empowering section for the court to consider bail, and it addresses every issue. We've placed that before the court. I don't think in respect of the subsections that there should be any dispute. It is dealt with, and those sections more sensibly deal with the safeguarding of exhibits and no interference with witnesses. Of course, we have passed that stage. There is no trial that must still take place. And it deals with the fact whether or not the accused is a flight risk. I can make one simple submission. This has been tested in all the other bail applications and found that he is not a flight risk. He's a well-known person. He's got a disability. He has abided by all the bail conditions all the time.
Now, this was the state's response to the defence's application.
Unlike application for bail, where accused is awaiting trial, we have a convicted murderer applying for bail. So the conditions should be stricter, and that's why we've only been swayed, my Lord, not to oppose and to make other submissions by the two issues, and that is the house arrest and the electronic monitoring. And we also agreed to an amount of bail of 10,000 rand, because in the affidavit you see it's discussed that the accused does not have the means to pay a higher amount of bail. But we're comfortable that the mere fact that the accused will be under house arrest and that there will be electronic monitoring, we will ensure that the accused remain and stand his trial. As a general submission, we're not convinced that the accused has made out a good case and that his application to the Constitutional Court will be successful, but we acknowledge that he has a right to bring such an application. And
let's go back to the issue of the house arrest.
Yes, madam.
It was submitted earlier that I think you could leave the house between 7 and midday. Why is it necessary to change that condition?
That was a condition of his community service and by correctional services on a charge of culpable homicide and having done a part of his sentence. This is now completely different. The accused is looking at a minimum sentence of 15 years, and this is as if he's not been sentenced. So
that for him now to be in the house for the whole day, that amounts to a punishment on its own?
Not necessarily, my Lord, with the utmost respect. It is agreement between the state and the accused for not opposing. We still believe that we'll have a good case to oppose, but knowing where the accused will be for the remainder of the day, knowing that we could monitor the accused, swayed us not to oppose. And, my Lord, we still believe that this accused, being convicted of murder, looking at a sentence of 15 years, may be a flight risk.
Now, the court has adjourned for a short while, and they will be back shortly. And as soon as that happens, we'll go back to the High Court in Pretoria. Meanwhile, the commission appointed to investigate the collapse of a bridge in Sandton, north of Johannesburg, will spell out its terms of reference in Pretoria today. That inquiry is expected to take at least 6 months to complete. 2 people were killed and 19 others injured when the Grayston Drive pedestrian and cyclist bridge collapsed on October the 14th this year. The Department of Labour says it established a Section 32 inquiry in terms of the Occupational Health and Safety Act into the collapse of the bridge to find out what exactly happened and what caused the bridge to collapse. Further afield now, the Secretary-General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, has made an impassioned plea to countries negotiating a new climate deal at the COP21 conference in Paris. He has asked them to put their differences aside and conclude a legally binding agreement by Friday, or risk plunging billions of poor people into environmental calamities due to rising global temperatures. But the funding dispute remains a major threat to a climate deal.
From consultation rooms to focus groups, negotiators worked the floor of the conference the whole day yesterday, intensely lobbying each other's support on key aspects of the proposed climate deal. There is some hope, others believe.
And it does really look promising at this point in time. We have asked the COP president now to consider several proposals, amongst which is really to now ensure that we have a text that's now a full agreement, proposed agreement, by Wednesday. And we think that that is doable, that is possible.
The most lobbied bloc here is the Group of 77 in China, currently chaired by South Africa. With over 100 developing countries as members, it's a solid and highly influential group. Some say there can be no deal if the conference does not concede to its key demands, which include billions of dollars for mitigation.
We would like to see the agreement coming out of Paris and being an ambitious agreement which will be applicable to all, which will be fair, and that all of us as parties, when we turn our backs from here, will go and implement and continue to assess as we go on. So it's not that we are, as the G77 plus China, looking for the impossible. It's that which we have agreed upon as a mandate that comes from Durban to be completed here.
Seeking to ensure that the negotiations do not collapse as they did 6 years ago in Copenhagen, the Secretary General of the United Nations held bilateral engagements with key role players yesterday. He urged them to put their differences aside.
I call on all ministers, all negotiators to cooperate, united by common purpose and common sense, to secure our common home and share the future. I count on your leadership, strong commitment, and wise decisions for humanity.
As another day begins, delegates here are aware that they are running against time. The good thing is that all of them agree that Paris 2015 cannot fail, because the consequences of not having a deal by the end of this week will be too ghastly to contemplate. Tammy Dixon, SABC News in Paris.
Fire authorities are investigating the cause of a fire that broke out at the Dawnsfield Nature Reserve belonging to the mining company De Beers in Kimberley in the Northern Cape last night. A large portion of the 1,100 hectares of land has burned. The fire started on the opposite side of the nature reserve and spread. Community members came out to give a helping hand. However, they couldn't get access because they didn't have the necessary skills. Fire trucks were sent in to put out the blaze. Authorities still need to determine the extent of the damage.
It's under control. A large area has burnt. We're not sure whether any wildlife has been burnt. We'll only be able to see that in daylight. But yeah, we've put most of it out. We just heard another area that's flared up. So we're going out there now to see if we can get it under control.
The critical situation in Burundi has dominated discussions at a joint African and European Parliament Assembly in Brussels. Some European politicians are calling for sanctions against the Burundian government over President Pierre Nkurunziza's controversial third term in office.
Burundi is deemed by many to be on the brink of major political and social collapse. The UN says 240 people have been killed in unrest since April, and many want President Pierre Nkurunziza to step down as leader. At the Africa, Caribbean, Pacific EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly, some lawmakers encouraged economic sanctions against the country to put pressure on the Burundian president to step down, calling his election illegitimate.
For the moment, we all know that the situation in Burundi is awful. More than 200,000 refugees, and also everybody is in fact witnessing the fact that the authorities are entering very toughly in the houses, killings and all these things.
This assembly couldn't come to agreement on joint action for Burundi, however. The Burundian government insists their president's third term is legitimate and say the rebel factions in the country are to blame.
They have provoked violence in our country, and it's this violence of which we observe today that are guarded remotely by the same individuals who have done the coup d'etat. I believe the European members of parliament should condemn the ones who have done the coup and ask that they are called to justice instead of wanting to sanction the Burundian government.
At the moment, however, there is no European Union delegation observing the situation on the ground in Burundi, and many of the African members of the Assembly say that should limit hasty EU action. This Assembly doesn't have the power to impose EU sanctions on Burundi, but there are some within it who are hoping that they can assert their influence on those who do. Putting restrictive measures on the government in Bujumbura, however, could have detrimental effects on the diplomatic negotiations. Jack Parrick, SABC News, Brussels.
The UN Security Council has been called upon to preserve and defend the peace process when it meets in the situation in Western Sahara later today. Polisario Front's envoy to the United Nations has warned that the process for a negotiated settlement with Morocco was in danger of collapsing if it did not get a firm push from the international community.
The Security Council will meet behind closed doors on Western Sahara Tuesday
for a briefing by the Special Representative Christopher Ross. The Polisario Front is calling for transparency.
I hope that Mr. Ross, the person involved, the Secretary General for Western Sahara, will be very transparent to transmit to the Security Council that the situation is not very good. Morocco is rejecting to enter into negotiation as requested by the Security Council, by Ban Ki-moon himself, last 4 November.
The Polisario Front have two main concerns for the Security Council. The fact that Morocco appears to be blocking any visits by the Special Envoy to the territory of Western Sahara, while Rabat has insisted that there will be no compromise on Morocco's claim to sovereignty over the disputed territory, in effect undermining calls for a return to negotiations without preconditions. MINURSO also remains the only UN mission anywhere without a human rights monitoring component in its mandate.
I remember that when South Africa was member of the Security Council, tried in a very powerful way to make sure that MINURSO will be mandated to monitor human rights. South Africa and other members of the Security Council, even one permanent member. But they failed because of the France opposition to that. France is helping Morocco to continue its military occupation, illegal occupation of the last colony in Africa, and continue to commit abuses of human rights. Then it's a shame for the United Nations that is the unique mission that is not allowed to monitor human rights. That will show, the strange case of Western Sahara.
He called on the Council to respect the AU position that a date be determined to hold the self-determination referendum for the region. Shervin Bricebees, SABC News, New York.
While the United Nations will need over $20 billion for humanitarian aid in 2016. The monies will be used to cover medical supplies, food, shelter and protection in a world facing a record number of people driven from their homes due to conflicts and disasters.
In Syria alone, an estimated 13.5 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance, while prolonged conflicts, many in Africa, are forcing millions from their homes and driving up the cost of coming to their aid.
Each year, more is expected of us. In 2016, protracted conflict will continue to be the greatest driver of human suffering and will take up the bulk of our funding requirements. We remain convinced that the only means to end the suffering in Yemen, Central African Republic, Nigeria, South Sudan, Syria and beyond are political solutions.
Worldwide, people forced to flee their homes reach 60 million, a level not experienced since the World War II era. The goal now, to help some 87 million people in 37 countries in 2016, after 2015 appeals remain only half-funded.
The level of suffering in the world continues to outpace the funding we need to address it comprehensively. We approach the end of this year with a record funding gap of $10.2 billion.
Consequences of a world where political compromises are hard to come by and the barrel of a gun often a preferred yet untenable choice. Shervin Bricebees, SABC News, New York.
Talking about money, Kenya will receive a $1.5 billion loan from China to extend its standard gauge railway from the capital Nairobi to the Rift Valley of Naivasha, where the country is set to put up an industrial park. The deal was reached and signed on the sidelines of the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation.
Kenya is building the first phase of the standard gauge railway from its port city of Mombasa to Nairobi to be completed by next year. It is expected to begin commercial services by 2017. The line will then be extended to neighboring Uganda and onward to Rwanda.
China Exim Bank will provide a $1.5 billion loan, or 85% of the financing, while Kenya will provide the balance.
The standard gauge railway will replace the more than a century-old narrow railway line. It is Kenya's single largest investment in 50 years.
15,000 local skilled workers and 400 engineers are being mentored.
East African nations are betting on the Chinese-funded line to increase efficiency in the transportation of goods between them while boosting trade. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.
And that's your news for now. We'll be back right after the break.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates, and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Good morning and welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamate on Newsroom. Now, while we wait for the judge to come back with to that court hearing where Oscar Pistorius is trying to get bail, we carry on with the sports. And Sri Lanka wicketkeeper batsman Kusal Perera has been sent home from their tour of New Zealand after failing a drugs test. Now, 25-year-old Perera failed the test administered by the International Cricket Council during a series against Pakistan in late July. Perera, who played in the tour opener against the New Zealand Board President's 11 last week, has been replaced by Kaushal Silva for the test series starting in Dunedin on Thursday. Sri Lanka Cricket said that a further B sample will be tested, and it planned to make every endeavour to get Perera back on the field as soon as possible. And the Court of Arbitration for Sport will conduct a hearing in Lausanne, Switzerland today to discuss whether UEFA President Michel Platini's suspension from soccer should be temporarily lifted or not. Platini has been suspended for 90 days while FIFA's Ethics Committee investigates a controversial payment he received from the world governing body in 2011.
Platini was paid around 27 million rand 4 years ago for work he completed between 1998 and 2002. The Frenchman claims it was payment for serving as technical advisor to FIFA President Sepp Blatter and says it could not be paid at the time due to the organization's financial situation. Both Blatter, who is also suspended, and Platini have indicated that there was a verbal agreement between the two and have denied any wrongdoing. A final verdict on the matter is expected by the end of the month. But Platini, who has registered as a candidate to take over the FIFA presidency from Blatter, cannot run while he's banned. The presidential election is due to take place on the 26th of February next year. Meanwhile, police in Peru have transferred former Peruvian Soccer Federation president Manuel Berger to the country's judicial authority. He was arrested last week as part of the ongoing US-led investigation into corruption at FIFA. Berger is among 16 people, including current and former Latin American soccer chiefs, who were charged with multi-million-dollar bribery schemes for marketing and broadcast rights. A U.S. embassy spokesperson declined to comment on whether he would be extradited to the United States. Liesl Zankel, SABC News.
Now, staying with football news, the 2015 Sasol League National Championship kicked off at Flavius Mareka Stadium in Sasolburg with great excitement as teams went head-to-head on the first day of the tournament. The defending champions, Cape Town Roses FC, got their title defence off to a great start, beating tournament debutants Red Roses FC 4-0. Nandi Paboy and Sisanda Bukapi netted a goal each in the first half. The Western Cape side scored 2 more goals in the second half to complete a miserable day for the debutants. Meanwhile, the 2014 bronze winners and tournament regulars Coal City Wizards from Mpumalanga lose 2-0 to Limpopo's Kenata Ladies FC. Right, now that's where we're going to have to leave it with the sport. Now, President Jacob Zuma will be bestowing National Orders Awards on local citizens and eminent foreign nationals in Pretoria. This is in recognition of those who've contributed to the advancement of democracy, excelled in various endeavours, as well as those who've made a significant impact on improving the lives of South Africans. Let's go live to hear the President.
Members of our national parliament and members of our provincial legislatures, Chairperson of the National Orders Advisory Council, Ms. Bridget Mabandla, and all council members, members of the diplomatic corps, representatives of the religious, business, and traditional leaders, and other sectors who are here, veterans of the liberation struggle, distinguished recipients of the national orders, and members of their families and friends, fellow South Africans. It is always a wonderful occasion when we get together to honor compatriots and friends from beyond our shores who have contributed to the upliftment of our humanity. The orders are a moment of great reflection, celebration, and pride for our people. They celebrate human achievement, human sacrifice, and human endeavors that make our country a better place. They also embody the spirit of excellence that is necessary for our country to advance and prosper. We are truly proud to bestow the orders on behalf of the nation on the outstanding recipients before us here today. We confer the Order of Mandy to any South African who has performed acts of bravery. We will today award the Order of the Mandy to Mr. Jethro Ndlovu, a veteran of the former Liberation Army Umkhonto weSizwe, who joined MK at its establishment in 1961, and a former prisoner on Robben Island. He pursued the struggle relentlessly in Cato Ridge, Fredville, and Campertown areas in KwaZulu-Natal, despite persecution by the security establishment at the time. We honor the late Northern Cape trade unionist and activist, another veteran, Mr. Joseph Morolong, another former Robben Island prisoner. He was one of the participants in the drafting of the Freedom Charter and one of the trialists in the first treason trial of the 1950s. He was tragically and cowardly assassinated by the apartheid regime. We recognize freedom fighter Mr. Caleb Musabi, who recruited, mentored, and ensured the smooth transit of recruits from around the Bloemfontein area into Lesotho. He suffered torture and a long incarceration period on Robben Island, above the decade that he served, about 12 years. He's one of those who went through the notorious detention period called 90 days detention in Pretoria. Esteemed guests, we honor veteran of the struggle, Mr. Eric Mchali, who is one of the founding members of Umkhonto weSizwe, a leading trade unionist, founding member of the ANC's intelligence unit in exile, and former MK Chief of Personnel in Tanzania, also a veteran of the South African Communist Party. Esteemed guests, the late Mr. Pumelelo Washington Bongo received a death sentence in 1964 for his political activities and was ultimately executed on the 10th December 1964. Among the first cadres of MK were arrested, tried, convicted to death and hanged. He was one of the commanders of MK in the East London area. While on death row, Mr. Bongo refused to have his sentence commuted in exchange for giving evidence against his comrades. These were the committed compatriots on whose shoulders the subsequent generations stood to advance freedom and equality in this country. Compatriot and friends, we confer the Order of Ikamanga to South African citizens who have excelled in arts, culture, literature, music, journalism, and sports. We award it in bronze to Mr. Themba Magaisa, a prolific writer whose work in language and literature contributes immensely to the survival and vitality of the Xitsonga language. We also award it posthumously to a renowned athlete and Olympic medalist, Mr. Mbulaeni Maluadzi, for his exemplary exploits in the field, which raised our flag high in the international arena. We award it to the late Mr. Darius Dlomo for his rare boxing and soccer prowess. He was the second South African to play for a European football league in 1958. Another pioneer in this category is Miss Winnie Busisiwe Mahlangu, the first woman announcer in the SABC, then Radio Bantu, Radio Zulu, which is now called Ukhozi FM, the biggest radio station in the country, with more than 7 million listeners a day. Ms. Mahlangu defeated discrimination in terms of gender and race and became a shooting voice and educator to millions of radio listeners, especially the poor and the working class. Mr. John Nakoa, a remarkable musician who established the Music Academy of Gauteng in 1994, is also recognized in this category. The late Professor Mbulelo Mzamane, the first post-apartheid vice-chancellor of Fort Hare University, ends it for his outstanding contribution to African literature, heritage, and education, and to acclaim and to academia in our country. The Order of the Baobab is awarded to South African citizens for distinguished service in the fields of business and economy, science, medicine, and for technological innovation and community service. We awarded to Justice Yvonne Mkhoro for her distinguished service as an academic and one of the first Constitutional Court judges in the democratic dispensation. It is also awarded to Mr. Douglas Anderson for his commitment and initiatives to improve the lives of disabled people in South Africa. Dr. Mary Susan Malahlela is awarded posthumously for her provision of essential medical services in the townships of Kliptown, Mfulo, and Dobsonville, starting from the late 1940s. Dr. Andrew Ross receives this honor because of his commitment to improve education among the underprivileged, focusing mainly on the medical field. He started initiatives to fund and mentor learners in various medical studies from the Ingwavuma community in KwaZulu-Natal, which culminated into the Tombo Youth Development Foundation and produced 218 healthcare professionals so far. The foundation continues to support 234 students from rural areas across all South African universities. The award also goes to Mr. Otto Sterlik, founder and owner of the Protea Hospitality Group, for his contribution as a pioneer in the hospitality and hotel industry in the country. Professor Emeritus James David Lewis Williams has been selected for the award for his exceptional contribution as a rock art specialist, particularly in the field of sand rock art. All these recipients make us truly proud. Ladies and gentlemen, we confer the Order of Luthuli to South Africans who have served the country by making a meaningful contribution in any of the following areas: struggle for democracy, human rights, nation building, justice, peace, and conflict resolution. We confer the order today to Mr. K. Munsami, a trade unionist and South African Communist Party member and ANC veteran who remained committed to the struggle despite detentions and torture by the apartheid regime. Mr. William Henry Frankel receives the honor for providing legal services and counsel, sourcing funds secretly over many years for legal support to the anti-apartheid activists on trial. Mr. John Malcolmus Mkabela served 18 years on Robben Island after serving as MK commander in the border region of the Eastern Cape, and on release, he continued with the struggle for liberation. Jailed did not deter him. He also left the country and continued the struggle in exile, spent more time in Zambia. Husband and wife, Mr. Petros Nyawose and Ms. Jabulile Nyawose, were also united in their commitment to the struggle. They died tragically when the apartheid security police planted a bomb in their car in Swaziland in 1982. It detonated when Mr. Nyawose started the engine of the car. Petros was rushing to drop his wife at work because she was getting late, and he was going to come back and take the kids to school. Normally, they would go together, the kids and the parents. On that day, because the kids were a little late, he thought he should rush the mother and come back. That's what saved the kids. Otherwise, the whole family would have perished. For some strange reason, the brother of the wife was sitting at the back seat. He survived with no injury. But the bomb took off their heads simultaneously. Our freedom was indeed not free. We lost many compatriots painfully, and we must always remember this as we enjoy the fruits of this democracy. Mr. Mohammed Tikli, former secretary of the ANC's Education Committee, earns the honor for his contribution to the education of ANC cadres in Tanzania. Under his directorship of the African National Congress School in Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College, groomed many young freedom fighters and academics. Compatriots, the Order of the Companions of Oliver Tambo is awarded to those who actively promoted the freedom, justice, human rights, and democracy through active support and expression of solidarity for the struggle against apartheid colonialism beyond our shores. President Nelson Mandela made a simple but very profound statement at the Wembley concert organized in his honor on his release in 1990, when he said to the international community, "Thank you. You chose to care." We echo those words wholeheartedly to our international supporters and colleagues and comrades who participated in the struggle. The highly regarded late General Hashim Bita of Tanzania contributed immensely to the liberation of many countries through his work as Executive Secretary of the Liberation Committee of the Organization of African Unity. The former Prime Minister of Canada, Honorable Mr. Brian Mulroney, who is with us today all the way from Canada, campaigned vigorously for sanctions against apartheid South Africa and for former President Nelson Mandela's release from prison. Professor Gareth Evans, who among others, among other portfolios, served as Foreign Affairs Minister in the Federal Government of Australia of 1983 to 1996, campaigned relentlessly for sanctions against apartheid South Africa. He also facilitated humanitarian support to the victims of apartheid under a program called Special Assistance Program for South Africa. The program offered many scholarships for South Africans, including those at the Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College in Tanzania. Esteemed guests, today we are pleased to be able to honor a key leader and activist of British anti-apartheid movement, Mr. Peter Hain, a Labour Party member of Parliament in the UK. Mr. Hain campaigned tirelessly against South African cricket tour in the 1970s as part of the sports sanctions, and his efforts spiraled to all sports, including rugby. He had begun activism at the tender age of 15 when he spoke at the funeral of John Harris, who had been hanged by the regime for bombing the Johannesburg railway station. He was harassed and persecuted for his support of the South African struggle for liberation. Esteemed guests, the former ambassador of the then Union of Soviet Socialist Republics to Angola in the late 1980s, Ambassador Vladimir Kazimierov distinguished himself a friend of the liberation movements in Southern Africa. He participated actively in the Joint Commission on Southwest Africa and in the resolution of the Namibian and Angolan conflicts, a positive development which was a significant part of the geopolitical shift which became a catalyst for our own liberation in South Africa. We also honor Professor Andrei Yurievic Yurnov, also from the Russian Federation, a diplomat and a historian who was one of apartheid South Africa's most vociferous critics. Mr. Lars Nadrobo, a thoughtful Danish architect, helped to improve the lodging facilities and other conditions for the ANC activists in Mazimbu, near Morogoro, in Tanzania. A habitable dormitory block, a nursery, a pig farm, and a chicken farm were part of his legacy in Mazimbu. Compatriots and friends, today we also have the pleasure to recognize the accomplished Malaysian international educationist, global entrepreneur, and communication strategist, Tan Sri Dr. Lim Kok Wing, who has been a friend of the democratic South Africa for many years. He has opened doors to many young people to obtain education and skills through his Lim Kok Kwing University of Creative Technology, which now has campuses in Lesotho, Botswana, and Swaziland. The university honored President Mandela with the Lifetime Campaigner for Peace and Freedom Award in 2013 and an honorary doctorate in 2008. Esteemed guests, the historic television footage of President Mandela voting for the first time in 1994 in Inanda shows Professor Gay McDougall from the United States assisting him to cast his ballot. This renowned legal scholar was one of the 5 international members of South Africa's 16-member Independent Electoral Commission that organized our country's first democratic elections in 1994. She also played an immense role in dismantling the maze of apartheid laws, thereby helping the birth of a new dispensation and a new nation. For all these immeasurable efforts and gestures of solidarity, compatriots and friends, our country remains eternally grateful. We salute all our recipients. All have contributed to building a better South Africa, a better Africa, and a better world. Distinguished guests, by the power vested in me in terms of Section 84 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, I now confer the Order of Mendi, the Order of Ikamanga, the Order of Baobab, the Order of Luthuli, and the Order of the Companions of O.R. Tambo to the distinguished persons indicated. And they shall henceforth be honored as esteemed members of the order. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for outlining the contribution of these heroic men and women who are to receive the highest honor this country can bestow to anyone. We are going to hear the learners going after what the President has said in bestowing this very important honor to the recipients. Thank you.
In Afrikaans. Kragtens die bevoegdhede aan my verleen by artikel 84 van die Grondwet van die Republiek van Suid-Afrika 1996 ken ek die orde van Mendi vir dapperheid, die orde van Ikamanga, die orde van die Baobab, die orde van Luthuli, die orde van Mapungubwe en die orde van die metgeselle van O.R. Tambo. Die ontvangers word voortaan geëer as gesiene lede van die ordes. Die mense van Suid-Afrika bring hulde aan hulle almal. Ek dank u vir die geleentheid.
ka leleme la Sepedi. Ka matla a ke a filego ke karolo ya 14 ya Molaotheo wa Rephapoliki ya Afrika Borwa wa ngwaga wa 1996. Bjale ke abela sefoka sa Mendi sa Bogale, sefoka sa Ikhamanga, sefoka sa Baobab, sefoka sa Luthuli, sefoka sa Mapungube le sefoka sa bagwera ba OR Tambo. Baamogedi go tloga mo ba hlomphiwa bjalo ka maloko a hlomphegago a difoka. Batho ba Afrika Borwa ba ba hlompha ka moka. Mošate.
Lotshani ngesindebele ngaphasi kwamandla enginikelwe wona wesigaba sama-48 somthethosisekelo weRiphabhliki yeSewula Afrika yomnyaka we-1996 kade esinginikela ngonongorwana wokuhlonipha weMendi for iBravery, unongorwana we-Ikhamanga, unongorwana we-Baobab, unongorwana we-Luthuli, unongorwana we-Mapungube kunye nonongorwana wabalingani baka-OR Tambo. Abamukeli kusukela khathesi baza kuhlonitshwa njengamalunga ahloniphekileko wabonongorwana bokuhlonitshwa. Isitjhaba seSewula Afrika sinithulela ingwane. Ngiyathokoza.
Ka leleme la Sesotho tlasa matlao ke a fuweng ke karolo ya 84 ya Molao wa Motheo wa Rephaboliki ya Afrika Borwa wa selemo sa 1996. Ha jwale go rwesa kgau ya Mendi bakeng sa ho bontsha sebete, kgau ya Ikhamanga, kgau ya Baobab, kgau ya Luthuli, kgau ya Mapungube le dikgau ya thaka tsa OR Tambo. Ho tloha jwale baamohedi ba tla hlomphuwa jwalo ka ditho tse hlomphehileng tsa dikga tsena. Batho ba Afrika Borwa ba tla ba thoholetsa kaofela. A leboha.
Hi ririmi ra Xitsonga. Eka matimba lawa ndzi nga ha va xerisiwa wona hi xiyenge xa 80 xa vumbiwa bya Riphabliki ya Afrika-Dzonga wa lembe 1999. Ndza nyika sweswi mfungho wa Mendi wa vunhenha, mfungho wa Ikhamanga, mfungho wa Baobab, mfungho wa Luthuli, mfungho wa Mapungubwe na mfungho wa xinghana xa OR Tambo. Kusukela sweswi vaamukeri va ta fundziwa tanihi swirho swo hlonipheka swa mimfungo. Vanhu va Afrika-Dzonga va va hluvulela xihuku hinkwavo. Ndza khensa.
Ngolimi lwesiZulu ngamandla agunyazwe yisigaba samashumi ayisishiyagalombili somthetho sisekelo waseNingizimu Afrika wonyaka we-1996. Ngithwesa manje izimiselo zomklomelo wobuqhawe weMendi, izimiselo ze-Ikhamanga, izimiselo ze-Baobab, izimiselo zikaLuthuli, izimiselo zeMapungubwe, izimiselo zabahlobo baka-OR Tambo. Laba abazothweswa leminyezane kusukela manje bazohlonishwa ngokuba ngamalungu aqavile ezindondo zesizwe. Abantu baseNingizimu Afrika banethulela isigqoko. Izwe lezithutha libuswa ngabahlakaniphileyo. Kepha ngithi vukani ma-Afrika amahle. Ngiyabonga.
IsiXhosa ngamagunya endiwanikiweyo phansi kweli candelo la-84 lomgaqo siseko weRiphabliki yoMzantsi Afrika yomnyaka we-1996. Ngoku ndinikezela imbasa yeMendi yobukhalipha, imbasa yeIkhamanga, imbasa yeBaobab, imbasa kaLuthuli, imbasa yeMapungubwe kunye nembasa yamahlakani ka-OR Tambo. Abo bazafumana ezimbasa kusukela ngoku bayakunikwa imbeko njengamalungu abekekileyo embasa. Abantu baseMzantsi Afrika babothulela umnqwazi bonke. Enkosi.
Khwedam Homa dit aya tiki khate ngidara na go higara o tswa firin dagtarsika South Africa si munteto hegara hi ne gantin sese ne gantarsika ti dukutwa da kamte he manda koze manda ko he Mendi meno a hakwaneta manda ko Ikhamanga me manda ko he Baobab me manda ko he Luthuli me manda ko he Mapungubwe me manda ko no te xa heta o Tambo me Tekto towate ahua kiava gon kwena uyo sikaha. South Africa ki ana klara go tinkwete uyo sikaha te ana nguya tenu te ana dukutwate.
Ka puo ya Setswana ka dithata tse di neilweng ke karolo ya 14 ya molaotheo wa Rephaboliki ya Afrika Borwa wa ngwaga wa 1996. Jaanong ke neelana ka sekgele sa Mendi sa bopelokgale, sekgele sa Ikhamanga, sekgele sa Baobab, sekgele sa Luthuli, sekgele sa Mapungubwe le sekgele sa ditsala tsa ga OR Tambo. Baamogedi go tloga fa ba tla tlotliwa jaaka ditokololo tse di tlotliwang tsa dikgele. Batho ba Afrika Borwa ba ba tlotlomatsa botlhe ke a leboga.
Nga luambo lwa Tshivenḓa nga maanḓa endaweso one nga tshipiḓa tsha vhufumalo ina tsha Republic ya Afrika Tshipembe tsha ṅwaha wa gidiḓaṱahefuṱaherathi ndi ṋetshedza tshiala tsha Mendi tsha Vhuhali, tshiala tsha Ikamanga, tshiala tsha Muvhuyu, tshiala tsha Luthuli, tshiala tsha Mapungubwe na tshiala tsha ṱhama dza OR Tambo. Vhaṱanganedzi vha ḓo ṱhonifhiwa sa miraḓo ya dzi order. Vhathu ba Afrika Tshipembe ba ba vulela miṅwadzi a
Ngesiswati nyemandla lenginiketwe wona ngaphasi kwesigaba semashumi lasiphohlongo nakune semthetho sisekelo weRiphabuliki yaseNingizimu Afrika weminyaka yenkulungwane nemakhulu layimfica nesithupha. Manje ngizathanza kukwehlonipha ngemklomelo weMendi, weBuchawe, umklomelo weBaobab, umklomelo weLuthuli, umklomelo weMapungubwe kanye nemklomelo webangani baka OR Tambo. Labamukeli batawuhlonishwa njengemalunga lasemqoka etinvonvo tesive. Bantfu baseNingizimu Afrika babetfulela sigqoko bonke. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you very much, our choir, and we thank our children for their beautiful rendition to the President's declaration. Another round of applause, please. The President, distinguished guests, and fellow South Africans, will now begin the ceremony and bestow the Order of the Mendi for bravery.
Well, if you've just joined us, very good morning and welcome to this special broadcast of the National Orders, coming to you live from the Presidential Guest House here in Pretoria. Well, the first award to be conferred to Jethro Ndlovu is that of the Order of Mendi for Bravery, Bronze.
Colors and faiths may regard one another as brothers, not aliens, friends, not foes, and as partners and co-workers in God's scheme of things. This, I think, is the supreme message of the Mendi. In his words, Reverend S.D. Moki said, this is the supreme message of the Mendi, that all men everywhere should regard one another in the very best of terms and realize, as perhaps never before, that their destiny is one, and that since in death they are one, why should they not be one in life too? We die together in war, but fight one another in peacetime. Why can't we here and now live together in love, even as we die side by side in war? That, I say, is the supreme message of the Mendi. In the language of the poets, S.E.K. Kai said, those dead stood in the foremost rank of Africa. Great the ship's burden when she sank. Brave of the brave they were, men who bring with their blood greetings to the King of Kings. Death has its rewards to live again. Gladly, I would stand with them, new risen men, and shine like one whose work is well done in the great brightness of that day's dawn. So then, let it be.
Jethro Ndlovu.
Well, the Order of Mendi for Bravery in Bronze goes to Jethro Ndlovu, who is currently receiving his award. Jethro Ndlovu, a liberation struggle stalwart, joined the ANC in 1959.
Mendi in Bronze is awarded to Jethro Ndlovu for his outstanding contribution to the fight for freedom, equality, and democracy in South Africa. represented by Mr. Nicholas Morolong. The Order of Mendi in Silver is awarded to Joe Morolong, posthumous, for his excellent contribution to the fight for liberation in South Africa. He endured tremendous personal persecution for the ideal of a democratic and liberated society.
Well, Joseph Morolong was born in the Northern Cape, a former member of the South African Congress of Trade Unions, involved in several anti-apartheid campaigns that were organized by the ANC in Cape Town.
Mr. Caleb Mutsabi, represented by Mrs. Mutsabi.
Okay. Well, Caleb, Commandant Mutsabi, as he was known, he joined the ANC in 1945. He did participate in the 1955 Congress of the People in Kliptown, when it was the Freedom Charter was drafted in 1961. He also became the Free State Commander of Umkhonto Wesizwe.
The Order of Mendi in Silver is awarded to Caleb Mutsabi, posthumous, for his excellent contribution to the fight for the liberation of the people of South Africa. He facilitated the creation of safe passage for many young people who went into exile to fight for freedom.
Caleb Mutsabi, of course, credited for recruiting many Free State youth who he ended up mentoring. Spent 12 years on Robben Island after his arrest in 1963. His wife received the award on his behalf, posthumously, of course. Well, this next recipient is Eric Mchali, born and bred in Durban, in KwaZulu-Natal.
The Order of Mendi in Silver is awarded to Eric Mchali for his excellent contribution to the fight against apartheid. In spite of great risks, he was never deterred in his quest for true freedom and social justice.
Well, Eric Mchali is also one of the founders of Umkhonto Wesizwe. He's been deeply involved in the liberation struggle, and those of us who've been attending conferences and all the important gatherings of the ruling party, we've seen him there. He has always been there. He was elected a member of the MK's Underground in KwaZulu-Natal. Went to the Soviet Union for military and intelligence training, and later to Cuba. He was appointed chief of personnel and served under the likes of Moses Kotane, J.B. Marks, and Moses Mabhida. He was also a journalist, founded Dawn, a weekly journal of Umkhonto Wesizwe. He was its editor between 1964 and 1969.
Mpumelelo Washington Bongo, posthumous, represented by Ms. Lungelo Bongo. The Order of Mendi in Gold is awarded to Mpumelelo Washington Bongo, posthumous, for his exceptional contribution to the pursuit of equality and universal suffrage in South Africa. He never relented and paid the ultimate sacrifice for freedom and democracy.
Well, Mr. Bongo was sentenced to death under the infamous Sabotage Act in the Queenstown Circuit Court in connection with a bomb attack. He was an Eastern Cape regional commander of Umkhonto Wesizwe, where he coordinated MK activities in that region. In 1963, convicted in 1964.
President, distinguished guests, fellow South Africans, will now bestow the Order of Ikhamanga after a rendition by the pen.
Well, the serenading sounds of the Army Band. Well, the next category is going to be the Order of Ikamanga. The Order of Ikamanga is awarded to South African citizens who have excelled in the field of arts, culture, literature, music, journalism, or sport. It's made in 3 categories.
Ikamanga. Budding with creativity like the rest, you blossomed with beauty like the best from land to land. Out of Africa's cradle of dust, you are the creative squire that glows. Your thronging tunes are loud as they blow to the distance across the streets, where now are the muse across the seas to confirm the motherland's applause. You have heard the call to run the tough mile, crafted with your palm's majestic beauty. Our wish to make a fair world with wounded hearts, yet no sorrow abounds. To you, children of the heavens, and us, mortal souls, who create eternal beauty, we bestow the Order of Ikamanga.
Mr. Temba Makaise.
Well, Mr. Temba Patrick Magaisa is a playwright who has taken it upon himself to invest his efforts in developing indigenous literature.
Is awarded to Temba Patrick Magaisa for his outstanding contribution to the development of indigenous literature in South Africa. His literary work has enriched the primary and secondary education curricula in our country.
Well, Mr. Magaisa's work has been credited for making it easy for the government to provide study materials for the teaching of indigenous languages. He writes in Xitsonga.
Mbulaeni Mlaudzi, posthumous, represented by Ms. Chifularo.
Well, Mbulaeni Mlaudzi needs no introduction, really.
To Mbulaeni Mlaudzi, posthumous, for his outstanding achievements as a track athlete and for his contribution to the advancement of athletics in South Africa.
Mlaudzi really needing no introduction. I mean, he's a multi-award winning athlete. In 2004, he won his first major global athletics award, a silver medal in the 1800-meter distance. Highlight of his career, though, was probably in 2009 at the World Championships of the International Association of Athletics Federations. That's where he won gold.
Mr. Darius Mfana Dlomo, posthumous. The Order of Ikamanga in silver is awarded to Darius Mfana Dlomo, posthumous, for his excellent talent in various professional sporting codes. His tenacity, sheer talent, and triumph in sport inspired generations of aspiring footballers and boxers who saw in him the epitome of excellence. Winnie Mahlangu. The Order of Ikamanga in silver is awarded to Winnie Mahlangu for her excellent contribution to the field of broadcasting and for keeping the listenership of the largest radio station in the country informed and entertained.
Well, Mama Hlangu with a lot of humor there. Well, she was in her days the doyen of radio, first black woman on the SABC's Radio Bantu as it was then known. She was a teacher by training. She retired in 1993. She's being awarded today for her contribution in broadcasting as an iconic voice of Radio Zulu, as it was once known, today called Ukhozi FM, still the largest radio station in the land. She has lost none of her sense of humor.
Dr. Ramakgobotla John Mekwa. The Order of Ikamanga in silver is awarded to Ramakgobotla John Mekwa for his excellent contribution to the development of jazz music in South Africa. He established a jazz music center that contributed to the growth of the careers of many South African jazz musicians.
Well, Brajoni, another legend that really needs no introduction. He is a celebrated trumpeter and jazz educator in his own right, one of the first graduates of the University of KwaZulu-Natal's bachelor degree in music.
Professor Mbulelo Mzamane, posthumous, represented by Professor Ntwane Mzamane. The Order of Ikamanga in silver is awarded to Mbulelo Vizikungo Mzamane, posthumous, for his excellent contribution to the development of African literature and the upliftment of African languages on the global stage.
Mbulelo Mzamane, the first, I should say, Vice Chancellor of post-apartheid Fort Hare University. Having been taught by the likes of Ken Temba of the celebrated drum generation, Dr. Mzamane, Prof. Mzamane later distinguished himself as a writer, one of South Africa's prolific writers who were in exile at the time.
Calling all the nations and everyone from different races, stand up and make some changes for a better human nation. Show compassion, lend a hand. It might not be easy, but I know you can. Nobody before, but together we'll stand. Love thy neighbor, treat him like your brother. Be like now and go because I live for China. Woman, now and go
Africa.
We are one. We are one. We are one.
Yeah, as a people, we are one. We are one. Russia, we are one. We are one. Yeah, China, we are one. We are one. Yeah. Oh,
Thank you, the soil. Indeed, we are one humanity. Thank you so much. The President, distinguished guests, fellow South Africans, will now bestow the Order of the Baobab.
The Order of the Baobab. We gathered under the shade of the baobab tree, listening to the wind gently whistling legends of old. Through the branches, magical worlds appeared. It gave shelter to both human and animal. A tree of friendship has fed us with sweet fruits and protected our bodies with its own skin. The baobab sustains life from the roots to the top of the branches. As the baobab tree stretches wide and long through the exceptional qualities of tolerance and service, we bestow the Order of the Baobab as a grateful gesture, peace, cooperation, and active expression of solidarity. The gift for a safe place under the tree.
Justice Yvonne Mokgoro. The Order of the Baobab in bronze is awarded to Yvonne Mokgoro for her outstanding contribution to the field of law and the administration of justice in a democratic South Africa.
Well, another incredible South African story. Judge Mokgoro started as a nursing assistant and later as a retail salesperson before her appointment as a clerk in the Department of Justice in what was then Bophuthatswana. She went on to complete an LLB degree. Incredible story indeed.
Mr. Douglas John Anderson. The Order of the Baobab in silver is awarded to Douglas John Anderson for his excellent contribution to the upliftment of the lives of children and people with disabilities.
Well, Mr. Anderson has been doing a lot of philanthropic work. He works for the SABC. He's participated in several charity drives aiming at benefiting not only people with disabilities but also orphans. He has been at the forefront of the struggle to lobby for stadiums to adapt their buildings to become for wheelchair users.
Represented by Ms. Lindiwe Mandeo. The Order of the Baobab in silver is awarded to Mary Makobachachi Malahlela, posthumous, for her excellent contribution to the provision of medical services to oppressed South Africans during apartheid. She was one of the first African women to qualify as a medical doctor in South Africa. Dr. Andrew Ross. The Order of the Baobab in silver is awarded to Andrew Ross for his excellent contribution to the training of young rural medics. His work has provided hope to communities that utilize rural hospitals. Mr. Otto Sterlich. The Order of the Baobab in silver is awarded to Otto Sterlich for his excellent contribution to economic and social development in South Africa. His business skills in the hospitality industry have benefited South Africa significantly. Professor Emeritus D. Lewis Williams. The Order of the Baobab in gold is awarded to James David Lewis Williams for his exceptional and distinguished contribution to the field of archaeology. His research on the rock art of the ancient people of Southern Africa has contributed invaluable knowledge about their lives and times.
Sugar baby, I go condombi anytime Kuthanda Zulu mangicabanga ngawe uzobu yanini Sthando sami lazy oh lazy akukondombi anytime Kuthanda Zulu mangicabanga ngawe
Thank you very much. For you, Lizzie, I'll buy an aeroplane. I think it comes cheap, you see. Well, thank you very much. The President, distinguished guests, fellow South Africans, will now bestow the Order of Luthuli.
This is the order for outstanding contribution in struggle for democracy, nation building, and human rights, justice, peace, and resolution of conflict on the continent. Throughout its history, the liberation struggle always formed alliances that would enhance its vision of a united, non-racial South Africa. In that time, it cultivated men and women of extraordinary courage, intellect, and selflessness to direct this vision. Amongst them was Nkosi Albert John Mbumbi Lutuli, a committed servant of his people. He pursued a path that displaced the notion of war and violence as vehicles to achieve freedom. On his way to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, Togo Makanya says, "Home, hills and mountains, even though you are silent, worlds across the seas have heard. Waves, I praise you for carrying my voice across the oceans. To the shores of Norway and America, I am now consoled that the corners of the world have heard."
Mr. K. Munsame. The Order of Luthuli in bronze is awarded to K. Munsame for his outstanding contribution to the fight for democracy and freedom in South Africa. As a trade unionist, he was among the leading figures who actively fought the apartheid system.
Well, Mr. K. Munsame, an activist, former unionist.
Mr. William Frankel. The Order of Luthuli in silver is awarded to William Frankel for his excellent contribution to the fight against apartheid. He played a significant role in raising funds for those detained by the apartheid security forces and those charged under apartheid legislation.
Well, there's another part of history. I mean, in the 60s, Mr. Frankel, who you see there, you know, they were approached by one Canon John Collins, the founder of the International Defense and Aid Fund for South Africa, the IDAF, whose really task was to assist with developing a strategy that would ensure that the government-banished IDAF continues its work assisting political detainees with legal costs and welfare for their families, working with the likes of your George Bezos and so on. So,
Mr.
yes.
Johnson Malcolm S. Mkabela, posthumous, represented by Ntomboise Wontoti. The Order of Luthuli in silver is awarded to Johnson Malcolm S. Mkabela, posthumous, for his exceptional contribution to the fight against oppression. he understood that human beings are naturally equal and that the subjugation of one race by another must be opposed at all costs.
Well, Mr. Mgabela, among the leading mobilizers for the Defiance campaign in the East London area, encouraged people to go wherever they wanted to go without having to carry a dom pass, which obviously resulted in his arrest.
Mrs. Jabulile Nyaose, posthumous, represented by Miss N. Nyaose.
Well, Jabulile Nyaose died in 1982 when a bomb planted on her family car exploded in Manzini in Swaziland. One trade union stalwart in her own right, worked with the likes of Alec Erwin and Ed Webster, who is at
for her
Wits
excellent
University
contribution
at
to
the
the
moment.
fight against apartheid. She paid the ultimate price for her involvement in the liberation struggle in South Africa.
Petros was, of course, the husband.
Mr. Petros Nyaose, represented by Ms. N. Nyaose. The Order of Luthuli in Silver is awarded to Petros Nyaose, posthumous, for his excellent contribution to the fight against apartheid. He paid the ultimate price for his involvement in the liberation struggle in South Africa.
Well, these were the people who were instrumental in smuggling the likes of Mac Maharaj and Stephen Dlamini into exile.
Mr. Mohammed Tikli. The Order of Luthuli in Silver is awarded to Mohammed Tikli for his excellent contribution to the fight against apartheid. He groomed many young freedom fighters while he was director of the Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College, SOMAFCO, during the days of exile.
Well, among Tikli's achievements helping to formulate the ANC's campaign of academic boycott against apartheid South Africa, he was also one of the people who developed the curriculum for SOMAFCO, the Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College in Tanzania.
I've got joy in my heart, and you know it's a kind of feeling, yeah, followed by sense of healing, yeah, yeah. I've got joy in my heart, got love in my heart, I've got joy in my heart. Hey, it's a kind of feeling, yeah, followed by sense of healing, yeah. I've got joy in my heart, got love in my heart. Hey, you're probably sitting there on your own, probably listening to the song, it's pumping all over your radio, and suddenly you feel a lot of joy, joy. You're singing along, the soul comes in, you don't care, just carry on. Probably sitting there on your own, probably listening to the song, it's pumping all over your radio, and suddenly you feel a lot of joy.
We are family.
I got my mother, my brother, my sister, my lover.
We are family.
I know it, I know it.
We are family. Family. We are family. We are family. We are family.
I know it, I know it.
We are family. Family. Tifugen ham klekseni.
Tifugen ham klekseni.
Hilanga betepseni.
Hilanga betepseni.
Nahambanda hektaweni. Ainda tanda chumesi achapulela. Hey, tifugen ham klekseni. Ham klekseni. Hilanga betepseni. Nahambanda hektaweni. Ainda tanda chumesi achapulela. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I know it, I know it. We are family.
We are family.
I know it, I know it.
We are family.
Thank you once more. The soil, consistency, one humanity. We are family. Thank you very much. The President, distinguished guests, fellow South Africans, will now bestow the Order of the Companions of O.R. Tambo.
Watching the friend and protector, Majola, visiting the newborn generation.
On this occasion, the world is with us in support, guaranteeing that we shall win.
In remembrance of O.R., the Moses of our nation, who led us with his encouraging teachings and moral guidance into the promised land. We honor your spirit as Majola safeguards the young and vulnerable of our society, preparing the vulnerable child for a successful and safe adulthood. President of the ANC for more than 30 years. With this in mind, the Order of Companions of O.R. Tambo is bestowed on individuals who have actively expressed solidarity, support, and encouragement towards the young and growing members of the human race.
Professor the Right Honorable Gareth Evans. The Order of the Companions of Or Tambo in silver is awarded to Gareth Evans for his excellent contribution to and support of the anti-apartheid movement. His exceptional leadership influenced the Australian public to provide scholarships for underprivileged South African students at home and in exile. The Right Honorable Lord Peter Hayne. The Order of the Companions of Or Tambo in silver is awarded to Peter Hayne for his excellent contribution to the fight against the injustices of apartheid and his unwavering support for the South African liberation movement. Ambassador Vladimir Kazmirov. The Order of the Companions of Or Tambo in silver is awarded to Ambassador Vladimir Kazmirov for his excellent contribution to the recording of the plight of the majority of Southern African countries, especially South Africa, during the period of minority rule. His work remains a testimony to the deep injustices during apartheid.
Well, it's the companions of Or Tambo in silver, which, of course, recognize the contribution made by people who from outside of our country, but made a significant contribution in the liberation of our people. People who actively promoted the interests of especially the oppressed people of South Africa.
Order of the Companions of OR Tambo in silver is awarded to Gay McDougall for her excellent contribution to the fight against the injustices of apartheid. She mobilized policymakers in the United States of America in support of the struggle for freedom in South Africa and put to use her legal expertise for the defense of political prisoners in South Africa and Namibia.
Well, Professor McDougall, it could be added, also served as one of the 5 international members of South Africa's first independent electoral commission, organizing the country's first democratic election in the run-up to that historic 1994 election. Many people will remember her as that lady that stood right behind and next to Nelson Mandela as he cast his ballot in 1994.
Norbo. The Order of the Companions of OR Tambo in silver is awarded to Lars Nordbo for his excellent contribution to the struggle for liberation and for his architectural skills that saw him build dormitory blocks in Mazimbu, Tanzania, which housed South African freedom fighters in exile. These blocks were later converted into a Tanzanian university.
Well, Lars Nordbo, of course, from Denmark. Many people remember how he visited them in exile and really was troubled by the conditions under which these people lived. And that's how he got involved in improving the lives of the ANC exiles in Tanzania in those years.
Ambassador Andrei Urnov. The Order of the Companions of OR Tambo in silver is awarded to Ambassador Andrei Urnov for his excellent contribution to the fight for the liberation of the people of South Africa.
Kept a secret. Amando.
Tansri Datosri Paduka Dr. Lim Kogwing. The Order of the Companions of OR Tambo in silver is awarded to Tan Sri Dato Sri Paduka Dr. Lim Kok Wing for his excellent commendable contribution to the fight against apartheid and to education internationally, with a special focus on Southern Africa.
Well, Dr. Lim Kok Wing is one of the most well-known communication strategists, and really he assists in humanitarian efforts, and really trying to get NGOs and causes to really come up with very catchy and visible initiatives that would really draw the attention
General Hashim
of
Mbita,
powerful people.
posthumous, represented by Ms. Sheila Mbita. The Order of the Companions of Or Tambo in Gold is awarded to General Hashim Mbita, posthumous, for his excellent and gallant support of African liberation movements and his tireless efforts in ensuring that the struggle for freedom throughout the African continent bore fruit. His Excellency, the Right Honorable Brian Mulroney.
Well, Brian Mulroney, of course.
The Order of the Companions of Or Tambo in Gold is awarded to Brian Mulroney for his exceptional contribution to the liberation movement of South Africa. His steadfast support for the release of Nelson Mandela and for imposing sanctions on South Africa's apartheid regime led to a free, democratic, non-sexist, and non-racial South Africa.
Well, acts which of course put him at odds with former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Now, they once had a very heated meeting in August of 1986. That's when isolated Britain ended up on the sidelines, with Canada moving with other Commonwealth nations to support sanctions and bans on new air links, new investments in South Africa, and the promotion of the tourism industry to the country. Regarded as one of the great friends of the liberation movement, in particular the ANC, for their solid support to the liberation movement.
Distinguished guests, we have come to the end of the ceremony. We congratulate all the recipients for the honor bestowed upon them today. We thank all of you, our distinguished guests, for attending this important ceremony on our national calendar. I would wish that you give yourselves a huge round of applause. May I also take this opportunity to thank the South African Military Health Service Band, to thank the South African Air Force Choir, to thank the soil. Would also like to thank again the children who rendered beautifully the President's declaration. Distinguished guests, all of you are invited to join the President for lunch. The President will now take leave. I thank you.
Well, that is how we come to the end of this award ceremony, the National Awards. We'll, of course, later on be talking to some of the recipients just to get their views about how they feel and perhaps to reminisce even over some of the things that they have done or that they once did to actually get to this point, to get the highest national awards orders from the South African President, President Jacob Zuma. For now, it's back to the studio in Auckland Park.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Good afternoon, you're watching the Midday Report, coming to you live from Johannesburg. I'm Devin Murrigan. Your top stories this hour. Oscar Pistorius to apply for leave to appeal against his murder conviction has his granted 10,000 Rand bail. The inquiry into the pedestrian bridge collapse in Sandton will only start next year. And then the Paris climate change talks heading into a final straight, so with many disputes still unresolved. Hello and welcome. The North Gauteng High Court has granted convicted murderer Oscar Pistorius 10,000 Rand bail. The case was postponed to April next year. Pistorius will also appeal his murder conviction handed down by the appeals court. The former athlete will remain under house arrest at his uncle Arnold Pistorius' home. The bail conditions include that he can leave the house only between 7 a.m. and 12 midday. He's not allowed to go beyond a 20-kilometre radius from his uncle's house. Electronic monitoring systems will be used to keep an eye on Pistorius. Meanwhile, earlier, the defence told the court that Pistorius would appeal a Supreme Court of Appeal ruling converting his culpable homicide conviction to murder. Well, earlier, SABC News reporter Griselda Lewis spoke to legal expert Dr. Llewellyn Curlewis. She asked him on what possible grounds Oscar Pistorius' legal team could take the matter to the Constitutional Court.
The fact of the matter is they've got nothing to lose, so to speak. In other words, any opportunity and reason to lodge an appeal to our highest court must be considered. I can surely think of a number of reasons why they might be inclined to try their luck at this Constitutional Court. The line that you've just mentioned is probably the best argument under the circumstances, because it directly have a bearing on a person's right to have a fair trial. And if they can convince the Constitutional Court that he did not have a fair trial, well, then it's up to the Constitutional Court then to make the necessary corrections as far as that is concerned. It is, however, and I must reiterate that, a very, very difficult route to follow. The Constitutional Court does not eagerly intervene at the Supreme Court of Appeal's judgments, especially where it was a unanimous verdict. On law, they were sound as far as I'm concerned. Whether from a constitutional principle, and constitutionally speaking, there might be one or two other issues to consider. You've mentioned one. I can think of another one, for example. The fact that he was let out on correctional supervision, in other words, got out of jail, basically, although under house arrest still and other correctional obligations. The question is now to suddenly once again put him back in jail. Isn't that also against constitutional principles, human rights, etc.? Those are the kind of issues that they will debate. And I do see that we might be in for another round.
All right. About 15 days for the defence, I guess, to file those papers, if indeed that's what will happen?
We should not confine ourselves to the strict compliance to the court dates as such. Remember that the courts are in recess currently, so they are basically on holiday until mid-January, end of January. So there are no obligatory court dates that is counting. Once that starts, then there obviously are rules to adhere to.
It usually is 14 to
Correct.
15 days, but because of recess.
And remember, you can always apply for condonation for the late filing of your application, and that is eagerly granted on the assumption that you've got good reasons to do so. The mere fact that we are on the December and January holidays should be sufficient reason for the judges to also grant condonation if it's a day or two late. So we shouldn't be too strict with regard to that aspect. But once again, I must also reiterate, the right time to do so, to consider lodging an appeal to the CC, is only after the sentencing has been finalised and the matter in the High Court Pretoria finalised once and for all. That is the right time to do so, not now.
All right, some analysis there on that bail application there by Oscar Pistorius. Well, murder-accused Christopher Paniatu's third attempt to secure bail has been dealt yet another blow. The Port Elizabeth High Court dismissing his application for access to the police docket into the investigation of his wife Jade's abduction and murder. Paniatu is accused of masterminding the abduction and murder of his wife Jade in April this year. The application was dismissed with a short judgment. The reason for the dismissal will be provided in writing later today. Paniatu's legal team was not in court for the ruling. They wanted access to the docket to study the affidavits it contains as part of a possible third bail application. Defence lawyer Albert Beuvelt argued last week that releasing the docket will not harm the state's case. But the state opposed the application. State prosecutor Marius Stander said that only once an application for bail is filed, denying access to the docket would be deemed to be unfair. Paniatu and two of his co-accused, Sizwezake Vumazonke and Senatemba Nenembe, will appear again in Port Elizabeth's Magistrates Court on the 12th of January. A fourth accused, Lutando Sioli, has since turned state witness. Well, the bail application of convicted murderer Thandi Makubela is underway in the High Court in Cape Town. The 60-year-old has served 8 months of an 18-year prison term for the murder of her husband, acting Judge Patrick Makubela, in 2009. A well-dressed Makubela seated in the dock, intently listening to the proceedings there. The application was delayed as she arrived at court late this morning. Makubela was sentenced to 15 years for murder, as well as 3 years for committing fraud and forgery relating to her husband's will. The fraud and forgery claims, or sentences rather, are running concurrently. Earlier this year, she was granted leave to appeal her murder conviction in August. She's seeking bail pending the outcome of an appeal in Bloemfontein. Now, the inquiry into what caused the collapse of a pedestrian bridge in Sandton will only begin next year. The Commission is facing some delays as remnants at the accident scene still need to be removed before tests can be conducted and reports of the investigation filed. Lenny Samuel, the commissioner appointed by the Department of Labour, was briefing interested parties on the procedure in Pretoria this morning. The investigation is looking into what caused the scaffolding of the bridge to fall on peak time traffic, killing 2 people and injuring almost 20 in October this year. The inquiry was set up by the Department of Labour in November and will look at whether any of the contractors or subcontractors erred during the construction. All the injured have been discharged from hospital to remain in a rehabilitation facility. President Jacob Zuma bestowed National Orders Awards on local citizens and eminent foreign nationals in Pretoria today. Among the recipients are former Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, as well as anti-apartheid campaigner and British Labour Party veteran Peter Hain. South Africans who received the awards include former constitutional judge Yvonne Mogoro and the late long-distance runner Mbolani Mulaudzi. A total of 32 awards were bestowed to recognise people who have contributed to advancing democracy in South Africa, excelled in various endeavours, as well as those who made a significant impact on improving the lives of South Africans. All right, more stories coming up after the break. Do stay with us.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top-quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. In business now, we start internationally. China's foreign trade dropping 4.5% year-on-year in November. The drop to $337 billion is the 9th consecutive monthly decline. The General Administration of Customs data shows exports dropping 3.7%. Imports fell by 5.6%. The trade surplus expanded by 2%. The EU, the US and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations remains China's first 3 trading partners in the first 11 months. The export to the US and the Asian grouping saw continuous increases, while export to the EU decreased. Now, 11 European Union finance ministers are aiming to finally reach agreement on the basic principles of a uniform tax on financial transactions. However, officials say there are still outstanding differences. Talks on the tax have dragged on since 2011. In September, the ministers from the 11 countries, which include Germany, France and Italy, said they had made progress and that they expected a political deal this month. But some officials are sceptical, saying differences remain on how to levy the tax. Germany and France proposed the tax at the height of the Eurozone debt crisis.